Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. Got an absolutely packed show for y'all tonight. Man, I'm you might be noticing I'm dressing a little bit darker clothing. I'm wearing my black DAC hat, but I always wear that, right? I'm wearing my NBA shirt, but I don't know if I've ever worn them together. That just so happened to be, but I guess it's black because I'm not in a very good mood because you'll see why with my leading topic to start the show. My Red Sox just got swept by the Yankees and are now out of the playoffs as we speak. So these last 72 hours sports-wise have not been good to me. Hard Knocks was somewhat boring, episode 2, and I will get to Hard Knocks later on in the show. But yeah, that's pretty much been it right there. So I'll get into that. I'll start the show by talking about the KD Draymond interview. I'm a Warriors fan, so I got a lot to say about this. I'm going to break down the Christmas Day schedule that the NBA came out with the other day. And there's a certain player that I've talked about, and I've been deemed a hater, who's not on the list of teams playing on Christmas. That later on the show, as well as Tim Tebow, my guy. Love the man. But he got cut, and of course he got cut, and I'll get into that later on in the show as well. Let's start, though, with Kevin Durant and Draymond Green. So Draymond Green has a new show on Bleacher Report. It's called Chips. Now, according to Draymond, it's basically like he's going to interview people, talk about like what drives you, what's the chip on your shoulder, the people that stabbed you. Because even the great Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, Serena Williams, Michael Phelps, the greatest ever in their respective sports, they've all had doubters. There's no question about that. And so Draymond's going to have great athletes. He may have, entertainers and stuff on there as well. That would make sense to do that because, listen, everybody who's successful has a chip on their shoulder. You got to have some kind of motivation to get you to where you're at. And so his first guest happened to be none other than his former teammate, Kevin Durant. Now, KD and Draymond are on good terms now. Matter of fact, I think they've been on good terms for the last couple of years now. Maybe not that much longer after their fight in 2018, against the Clippers. More on that in a second. But KD was being asked by Draymond pretty much every question Draymond could ask. I mean, he went personal. He talked about, do you want to have kids later on in life? And, different things like that. I mean, he went deep. He went professionally. He went personally. And it was a great interview. It's about 24 minutes long. It's on YouTube right now. I definitely recommend y'all going on and watching that. Of course, after you watch this, we definitely want you to stick around. But midway through the interview or so, actually, it was pretty early on, Draymond asked the question that we've all, certainly I as a Warriors fan, have been wanting to know. Did Kevin Durant and Draymond Green's fight on November the 12th, 2018, did that result in KD leaving the following summer in the offseason when he was a free agent? Draymond asked him that question, and for those of you that did not watch the interview, KD's response was, quote, "It wasn't the argument. It was the way that everybody, Steve Kerr, acted like it didn't happen. Bob Myers tried to just discipline you," talking about Draymond Green, "and think that would put the mask over everything." And so KD said, the organization, how they handled it is why I left, not the argument itself. Okay, so they later, they were talking about it, discussing it one-on-one, and Draymond, because they played the Clippers that night in Los Angeles, they flew back to the Bay Area because the very next day they had a home game against the Atlanta Hawks at Oracle Arena. So they quick flight back to the Bay Area. Draymond Green was suspended for that game. And according to Draymond, when he met with Bob Myers and Steve Kerr, general manager and head coach respectively, at the team facility, that's when Bob Myers broke the news, "We're going to suspend you for this game." And according to Draymond, he laughed in their face. And he eventually said after that, quote, "Y'all are about to F this up. I said the only person that can make this right is me and Kevin. And there's nothing that y'all can do, and y'all are going to F this up. And in my opinion, They effed it up. KD responded, quote, I think so too. So there you go. They spilled the beans out on the table, and that is what it is. So now for my thoughts about this. Let's start with the beginning about the fight itself. For those of you that don't know, the Warriors are playing against the Clippers, and into the game, there's about 10 seconds left. The game is tied. Lou Williams of the Clippers forces a bad shot at the end of the shot clock. It misses badly. Draymond grabs the rebound. Now, there's about 7 seconds or so left in the game. Plenty of time to get it up the court and get a decent shot off. KD's standing right there next to Draymond, clapping for the ball, saying, hey, give me the ball. Let me take the last shot. Draymond glances and then takes off down the court, probably looking to get somebody like Kevon Looney, who was running to the rim, open for a dunk that would have won the game, or get Clay open, who was running who's running baseline, see if he could get him open for a game-winning jump shot. What ended up happening is Draymond dribbles into a double team. He loses the ball. Time expires. The game goes to overtime, and then chaos ensues. They go to the bench. KD and Draymond go back and forth. Draymond calls Kevin Durant the one word you do not call another grown man to his face, the B word. He calls him that multiple times. After the game is over, the Warriors lost the game. After the game is over, they go to the locker room, and it only gets worse from there. Draymond continues to call KD the B word. And then maybe worse than that says, quote, we don't need you. We won without you. Leave. That's what he said. Verbatim. That's what he said. And so some, I thought it at times too, thought that's it. That was a nail in the coffin. KD was already kind of, I don't know if I should say that was the nail in the coffin. Well, maybe not. Because on the flight home, that's when apparently Bob Myers, Steve Kerr discussed what they were going to do. And they suspended Draymond Green, which at the time, and again, I obviously did not have a podcast back then, unfortunately. I'd love to have been behind the mic for that. But I thought at the time, what are you doing suspending Draymond Green? To me, you don't suspend anybody. As Draymond mentioned in here, let him and Kevin talk it out. Like Draymond said, he said, quote, the only person that can make this right is me and Kevin Durant. And he's right. That's the only way to make things right. Bob Myers can't force that. Steve Kerr can't force that. Now, listen, for the record, Bob Myers is a great general manager. The same can be said about Steve Kerr as a head coach. I have tremendous respect for them both. But come on, guys. And I'm especially disappointed in Steve Kerr because as a player, he was a part of a dynasty that had quite a bit of conflict. That would obviously be the 90s Chicago Bulls. Steve was a part of the second three-peat from 1996 through 1998. He was in the second three-peat. I'm sure y'all watched The Last Dance like I did last spring. There was conflict every 5 minutes, whether it was between Jordan and Jerry Krause, or Jerry Krause and Phil Jackson, or Scottie Pippen and Jerry Krause, or Dennis Rodman and Jordan and Phil Jackson. I mean, it was all over the place. And they still won. Why? Like grown men, like grown adults, they talked about it. They worked through it. And they were rewarded with championships because they knew the only team that can beat us is us. We've got Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, and Phil Jackson coaching us. Nobody should be able to beat us, and nobody did. They beat themselves. They blew up the whole organization pretty much after the 1998 finals. We all know how that story ends. And so when I look at this, I say, I agree with Draymond. I agree with Kevin Durant. Bob Myers, Steve Kerr screwed this up bad. And I'm hearing some of the media saying, where was Steph Curry? Why didn't, if Steph's the leader of a team, why did... Shows me how much research y'all did. Steph Curry was not at the Staples Center that night because Steph was hurt. He was back in the Bay Area getting treatment. It was just a one-game road trip to Los Angeles for the Warriors before they went right back to the Bay Area. So there was no point in Steph coming on a trip in mid-November for one game. If he's not going to play, it's not a long road trip. Nobody ever does that with their players that are injured. So Steph wasn't even there. So don't blame Steph. But I just look at this and I watch the interview and I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm not saying KD would have stayed. I'm not saying that. But you could tell over the course of the season that last year KD was with the Warriors, he didn't trust them. To me, the beginning of the end of KD and Golden State was after, I think it was 3 days after the 2018 finals concluded, after they swept Cleveland. It's at the parade. KD had just won a second finals MVP. Everybody's happy. Everybody's smiling. There's confetti falling. It's a beautiful sunny day in San Francisco, California. And as the team is being interviewed by Bob Fitzgerald, who is the play-by-play man for the Warriors out in the Bay Area, he was interviewing some of the players, coaches, front office. He was asking Bob Myers, because KD was a free agent that year too. Like he just signed a bunch of short-term deals to keep the Warriors on their toes, which, by the way, I totally agree with. But he asked he asked Bob Myers about Kevin Durant and his contract. He said, I'm sure you're bringing like Kevin Durant back, right? He said, yeah, we he may need to take a pay cut, we might bring him back, but he'll have to take a big pay cut to stay with us. Said it jokingly. You don't say that ever. You don't tick off your superstars, and you darn sure don't tick off that superstar. Why would you even throw that out there? And to make matters worse, he talked about Steph. Bob Myers asked him then about Steph. He said, oh, yeah, he can have all the money he wants. He's a blank check guy. What are you doing? What did you hope to accomplish by that? Had he had one, had he had one bottle of champagne too many? I don't know. But how do you screw that up that bad? You've got arguably the greatest collection of talent in basketball history. You've got the greatest shooter of all time and the second greatest point guard of all time in Steph Curry. You've got arguably the second greatest shooter and probably the best 3-and-D guy in the league in Klay Thompson. You've got a defensive player of the year in Draymond Green. You've got one of the smartest 6 men off the bench in the league in Andre Iguodala. Oh, and by the way, you've got Kevin Durant, who gets up out of bed and averages 30. And all of them, outside of Iggy, all of them were in their primes. I'm at a loss for words after that one, guys. I am. What Bob Myers, and again, this is why I'm more disappointed than Steve Kerr. Bob Myers played basketball. I think he played collegiately at UCLA, but Steve has been around the NBA for over 30 years as a player, he's done everything. He's been a player, he's been a broadcaster, he's been in the front office, and he's been a head coach. He's done it all. He knows how this works. Players fight occasionally. They fought a lot in Chicago. They fought a lot in LA when it was Shaq and Kobe. Didn't matter. They worked through it like professionals. You didn't have to step in and suspend Draymond. Draymond had given you 3 championships. At that time, 4 straight finals appearances, and was the heart and soul of your team. That is an awful message to send to him. You say, well, maybe it gives them a better shot at keeping KD because, it makes them say, oh, well, we sided with Kevin Durant. Bob Myers already screwed that up, the parade, 5 months prior. I don't know, man. This was a frustrating one. I watched that interview and I'm thinking, God, how do we miss that? It doesn't change my opinion that Bob Myers is a great GM or that Steve Kerr is a great coach. But maybe, is it possible, certainly based off that interview, that if Draymond and KD work things out like adults, which they wound up doing anyway, is it not possible KD might have stayed? Oh boy. Okay, I gotta try and get my mind off this stuff, because that, as a Warriors fan, was a brutal pill to swallow. To think we could have still had him in the Bay Area, still in his prime. You saw what he did in the playoffs. Okay, he went out with 48 points in a Game 7 against the eventual NBA champions. KD can still play. He's still in his prime. Look what Steph did last season. Draymond had a great year. Top 5 in assists and steals. And Clay's going to be back. I mean, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. That was brutal. All right. Let's transition now to the NFL. And let's talk about something I never thought I'd talk about in the history of carving it up. That a fourth-string tight end on one of the 4 worst rosters in the NFL after the first preseason game got cut. Those of you that are not following along, I'm referring, of course, to Tim Tebow. Now, sadly, I feel like I have to preface any topic about Tim Tebow because his fans are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs about how we were so wrong about him as a quarterback and as an NFL player. Tim Tebow is a phenomenal human being. Honest to God, he is one of the best human beings I've ever watched from a distance ever. I mean, you're talking about a guy that, does so much for disabled kids, less fortunate kids. He fights sex trafficking. I mean, great dude. Really is. Him, his wife, his parents, his siblings. I mean, they're just a great family. But he's not an NFL player, and he never has been. For the record, he was arguably one of the 10 greatest college football players of all time. I mean, come on. The guy won 2 national championships. He won the Heisman. He was a finalist for the Heisman another year, but lost to Sam Bradford. I mean, at a program that's had some great players, and that hurts me as a Tennessee fan to say, but Florida's had some great players. Tim was their best. Tim's the greatest Florida Gator football player of all time. There's no debate. Even over Steve Spurrier. That does not make you a great NFL player. I mean, I'm about to rank my top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL at the end of the show, and you will definitely want to stay tuned for that. But some of the best quarterbacks in the league, you know where they played at college? Patrick Mahomes played at Texas Tech. Not a powerhouse. Josh Allen played at Wyoming. Okay, Dak Prescott played at Mississippi State. All right, so Aaron Rodgers played at Cal. These are not football powerhouses by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, you can come from anywhere. But for the Tebow fans out there, let's do a hypothetical here. Let's say there was a guy who came into the league and his first 2 years as a quarterback, he was a quarterback, he had one of the worst completion percentages in NFL history. And he gets traded to a team who doesn't play him at all. The following year, he joins a team that has the greatest quarterback of all time in front of him, one of the greatest coaches of all time coaching him, and he gets cut from that team. And then 2 years after that, he gets signed by another team with a chance to compete for the backup quarterback job and doesn't even win the third string job. And then he transitions to an entirely different sport, baseball, and in Double-A hit .223 in Double-A. And then retires, and then 2 years after that goes back to the NFL and changes positions. Do you actually expect that guy to make the team? And if we're keeping it real, not like we all didn't know this, privilege was on his side. Knowing Urban Meyer was very much on his side. Are you telling me that if any coach was the head of the Jacksonville Jaguars, that Tim Tebow would have been on the roster? Urban did Tim a solid because Tim won him 2 national championships at Florida. This was a publicity stunt. I criticized it the second it was made because I said, look, they're not going to have a problem selling tickets. They got Trevor Lawrence. Okay, he's going to sell the tickets. Not that they're going to be a great team this year, because they're definitely not. But you got the best quarterback prospect in years, since at least Andrew Luck 9 years ago. Like the Jaguars, people are going to watch I'm going to watch the Jaguars. They'll be, at least for the first part of the season, they'll be somewhat interesting. Because I want to see Trevor Lawrence play and see what he's got and see if he can truly, and I believe he can, lift this franchise to heights they've never quite seen before. Not this year, but as time goes on. They didn't need to sell tickets. The Mets did. The Mets Double-A did. That's what they signed Tim Tebow. They actually asked the Mets themselves. They actually said, yeah, we did it for tickets. I mean, for the audience watching live, for the Tebow fans out there that still, because trust me, I've seen Twitter, man. It's a weird place. There are still Tebow fans out there that think he should be on an NFL roster. For the live audience, does this look like a guy that belongs on an NFL roster? Come on. His blocking is atrocious. Just because he's incredibly fit. I mean, Tim Tebow's in unbelievable shape. I mean, for real. And he put on extra muscle to become a tight end. Respected the dedication, no doubt. But just because you're jacked up does not mean you're a great blocker. I mean, he was a quarterback. He wasn't a very good one, but he was a quarterback. How many quarterbacks go to blocking tight ends? How many of those do you know? So I don't know. I think this is it for Tim. I think. But the guy had not played in a regular season game in 9 years. I mean, come on. And he changed positions. He wasn't even good at his original position. And he lines up at tight end. I mean, there was even one play in their preseason game against the Cleveland Browns where Tim is running a route. And right in the middle of it, because he's wide open, he just stops. He just stops in the middle of his route. And Tavon Austin, a journeyman receiver, steps in front of him and catches the pass and runs with it. People are like, oh, Tavon stole the pass from Tim. No, Tim just stopped in his route. Like, you don't do that in the NFL. Maybe in college, but, routes are more complex in the NFL. Not so much anymore because they have brought college schemes, but still, the NFL route concepts are more complex in college football. It was a publicity stunt the whole time. It was kind of a joke. And just because I'm saying this does not mean I don't like Tim Tebow. That's why I got to preface every Tebow topic, and please let this be the last one. But that's why I got to preface every Tebow topic with, I think he's one of the greatest human beings in the world. Literally, that's not even hyperbole. I really do think he's one of the best human beings in the world. He's not an NFL player. He's not a professional athlete. So I wish Tim nothing but the best. I wish his family nothing but the best. I'm sure he might want to start a family with his wife. God bless them there. And he's going to continue to do some unbelievable things off the field. But he was never an NFL player, ever. Love the guy. But we got to be objective. I mean, what are you telling me he's better? Tim Tebow's not better than the worst tight end in the league last year. Whoever it was better than Tim at playing tight end. So there you go. Like I said, man, never thought I'd talk about the fourth string tight end on one of the worst rosters, if not the worst roster in the league, getting cut after the first preseason game. But that's sports. That's sports. Never fails to bring us stories. So, NBA schedule. The full thing, for every report I'm reading, is coming out tomorrow at 3 Eastern, noon Pacific. So really looking forward to that. That's going to be fun. So the NBA, what they did, I guess, in promotion of their schedule, they put out their opening night schedule, the opening week national primetime games like on TNT and ESPN and ABC, like they put out those games. So like on opening night, for example, NBA once again hit it out of the park. They got the Brooklyn Nets visiting the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks. Milwaukee's going to raise the banner. It's going to be great. The place is going to be is going to be rocking. And then you're bringing in a Brooklyn team who lost to them in a Game 7, a Brooklyn team who many thought were going to win the finals last year. And so that's going to be great. By the way, did I not say during the playoffs last year, I actually thought about this when I was, planning to talk about the schedule. Did I not say last year that the Brooklyn-Milwaukee series in the second round, I guess the series started in June, late May, early June. Did I not say that was the finals, that those were the two best teams in the playoffs, and Milwaukee won the series, and guess who won the championship? Milwaukee. So Brooklyn could make the case if they get past the Bucks, they win the finals. They could make that case. So that'll be a great opening night game. And then the second game of the doubleheader, I can't wait for this one. You got my Golden State Warriors traveling to the senior citizen Los Angeles Lakers. Looking forward to that. I doubt Klay Thompson will be healthy for the game. Every indication by the Warriors organization is that he will not be healthy. So, that's unfortunate. But hey, Golden State almost beat the Lakers last year in the play-in game without Klay, without Damian Lee, without James Wiseman. And it took a LeBron 30-footer to beat us. So I think we will be just fine on opening night. But, the Christmas Day schedule, that's what the NBA, they know this is their biggest day of the regular season, is Christmas. Now, I feel bad for the NBA somewhat in this regard that now the NFL is doing Christmas games, right? Like they're just putting, they're not going to let Christmas fall on, which this year happens to fall on a Saturday, so they could do that anyway. But they're not going to do where they wait for it to fall on a Thursday, a Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. They're like, we're going to put a Christmas game. So they did that last year with the Vikings and the Saints. Well, because they saw how big of a success that was, and they did steal some of the ratings from the NBA because the NFL, it is America's sport. It just is. It's America's league. Now they're going to have two. They're going to have two Christmas Day games. So you're going to start. It's a doubleheader. Cleveland Browns, Green Bay Packers. Both are in the Super Bowl picture. It's going to be at Lambeau Field. It's going to be freezing. People are going to watch. 4:30 Eastern on Fox, 1:30 Pacific. And then after that, you got the Colts and the Cardinals, two teams looking to make the playoffs. Like, people are going to watch those games. So I do feel bad for the NBA in that regard. But let me go ahead and put up the schedule, the Christmas Day schedule. This is the biggest day of the regular season. And here you go. So the first game, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. For those of you on the West Coast, those of you NBA fans on the West Coast, you get to watch some NBA games as you open Santa's gifts, so that'll be fun. It's the Atlanta Hawks at the New York Knicks. Obviously, they played in the playoffs last year in the first round. It was the Trae Young coming out party. He is now one of the most disliked players at Madison Square Garden. I never knew Trae Young had the villain in him. I didn't know he had that in him. But that's what Madison Square Garden can sometimes do to you. I'm sure Spike Lee will be there. I'm sure Tracy Morgan will be there. Pretty much every entertainer in the Big Apple will be at Madison Square Garden that night, and it will be great. But you got Trae Young, and then you got the Knicks last year who shocked everybody, and we'll see what they do this season. They brought back pretty much everybody and added Kemba Walker. So we'll see. The second game, 2:30 Eastern, 11:30 Pacific, is going to be on ABC. You've got the Boston Celtics taking on the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks. That's a fun game too. Jason Tatum, best season of his career thus far. You know, he's only 22, 23. He's only going to get better. He's not even in his prime yet. And then you're taking on he's taking on the Bucks, where you got Giannis, who I think cemented himself during the finals as the best player in the league. We can debate that later. But that'll be an interesting game as well. The in-between game, 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific, Golden State Warriors, Phoenix Suns. More on that because it is significant to my main point in this in just a second. But that game's going to tip off on ABC. That'll be great. Clay should be healthy by that point. So you got the defending Western Conference champions against the future 2022 Western Conference champion, the Golden State Warriors. And then the big one. This is the one everybody's going to be watching. Brooklyn Nets, LA Lakers, East Coast, West Coast, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on ABC and ESPN. A lot of people wish this was the finals, including myself. I would have loved for this to be the NBA Finals. It's going to be at Staples Center. Pretty much every star possible. Snoop's going to be there. I'm sure Kevin Hart was at Staples Center a couple of years ago, and he's a Sixers fan, but I'm sure he'll be there. It'll be a spectacle. I can't wait for it. I can't wait for it. It's going to be amazing. And then the nightcap. Usually the nightcap is kind of an average game. Not this year. 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific. I'm on the East Coast. I'm staying up for this game. Dallas Mavericks, Utah Jazz. You got Luka Doncic versus Donovan Mitchell. I can't wait. This Christmas Day schedule is awesome. It literally gets better as the day goes on. I can't wait. Something, again, for the live audience, those of you watching, and for the podcast audience, I'll just go ahead and quickly name the 10 teams playing on Christmas. Notice a team that's not there. Now, just hear me out. I'm going to name all the teams in order that are playing on Christmas Day in 2021. Hawks, Knicks, Celtics, Bucks, Warriors, Suns, Nets, Lakers, Mavericks, Jazz. Notice there's somebody who is missing from the list. Who could that possibly be? Oh, yes. The guy who social media has tried to convince me, the NBA media has tried to convince me, was the MVP last year, Nikola Jokic. Now, Jokic is a top 10 player in the league. I acknowledged that a couple of weeks ago when I ranked my top 15 players. But MVP, so much of an MVP that the NBA said, nah, we won't put him on Christmas. To me, what's ironic is that the two guys I thought should have been 1 and 2 for MVP, they happen to be facing each other on Christmas. Steph should have won the award. Chris Paul should have been in second. Because if it is most valuable player, and this is going to be a yearly occurrence on the show, I'm sure, because guys are going to win the MVP that weren't the most valuable player. I'm sure guys that are the most valuable player are going to win. But Steph, when he was, I've said the stat a million times, but it is truly remarkable. When Steph Curry was off the floor for the Golden State Warriors, they were the 7th worst offense in NBA history. Just think about that. When he was off the court, 7th worst offense in NBA history. Chris Paul. Now, I know everybody's killing him for his finals performance, and he was not great. He wasn't. But you're talking about a Phoenix team, a Phoenix organization that 10 straight years had not been to the playoffs. They'd never been to the playoffs in a decade. Not only do they make the playoffs when Chris Paul comes there, they come within 2 wins of winning the NBA championship. Just think about that. Monty Williams was there last year. Monty Williams has cemented himself in my mind as a top 5 coach. He did a fantastic job during the playoffs and during the regular season as well. They had the 2nd best record in the league. Monty Williams was there in 2020 when they missed the playoffs. Devin Booker was there. He was hurt for stretches, but DeAndre Ayton was there. A lot of the Phoenix players that were on this title contending team in 2021, they were there in 2020. Not Chris Paul. But when Chris Paul shows up, because when Chris Paul shows up literally anywhere, they are instantly better, and the second he leaves, they're instantly worse. Kind of like LeBron, but to a lesser degree. Like LeBron leaves, and the team he leaves is just in shambles. Outside of Miami in 2014, Miami missed the playoffs, but they weren't in shambles. But not the same. So I just thought it's interesting. One more time, I'll put up the schedule. I'll put up the Christmas Day schedule. Here you go. Atlanta star is Trae Young. The Knicks are on Christmas because they're finally interesting again, and so the NBA almost always puts the Knicks at the noontime Eastern game. Like they almost always put the Knicks at that time. The second game, Jason Tatum, superstar. Giannis, best player in the league. That's an interesting matchup. Steph Curry, superstar. Chris Paul. Should have won second. Should have been second in the MVP race last year. Devin Booker is going to continue to get better, as is DeAndre Ayton. By the way, Klay Thompson is finally back. Draymond. All kinds of interesting storylines for the Golden State Phoenix game. The big one has all the storylines. Brooklyn, Lakers, superstars all over the place. Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, LeBron, AD, Westbrook isn't a superstar, but he's a star. I mean, the storylines for this game are going to be crazy. Can't wait for that game. And then the final game, you got Luka Doncic, superstar. Donovan Mitchell, borderline superstar. It killed me to leave him outside of my top 15 players. Killed me. I think he'll be there next year in my top 15. But yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, if he's the most valuable player, and I checked, I went on, what's this research site called? I would highly recommend you download this app. It's called StatMuse. I think ESPN runs it. I think because I've heard Scott Van Pelt talk about it on from SportsCenter late at night. But I looked it up on StatMuse. And Nikola Jokic was the first player in NBA history, in NBA Christmas Day history. He's the first returning MVP to not be on Christmas since the schedule had 5 Christmas Day games starting in 2008. He's the first MVP not to be featured on Christmas. Well, most valuable though, right? He's the most valuable player. Had a great year, guys. He did. He was not the most valuable player. Steph was. He's on Christmas. Chris Paul was. He's on Christmas. Joel Embiid was. I think he should have been on Christmas. I'd rather Philadelphia played Milwaukee than Boston. I think that would have been a more interesting matchup because Boston's not a title contender this year. Philadelphia probably still is. I mean, Philadelphia's got a better chance than Boston. Even those in Massachusetts, in the New England area, would agree with that. But it is what it is. But I think it's just really interesting that social media tries to convince us so-called haters, or the NBA media tries to convince us he wasn't the MVP, guys. He wasn't. If it had been Steph, I'd totally agree with it. If it had been Chris Paul, would not have complained whatsoever. Embiid probably wouldn't complain much either. But, it happens. Sometimes sometimes I'm occasionally right in the show. Sometimes I'm wrong. This is one of those where I think I was right. Before I get to my top 10 quarterbacks currently in the NFL, let's talk about Hard Knocks real quick. Episode 2 premiered Tuesday evening at 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific time on HBO. Episode 1 had plenty of storylines. The Mike McCarthy speech that sounded like it was from like a high school football movie. You had, Dak talking about his injuries, and they showed how he got hurt with the shoulder in episode 1. You had Zeke wrapping Dak a present. It ended up being a big suitcase. It was a fun episode. Episode 2 had decent storylines. The Kamara kid, he's a refugee trying to make the team. They went to Arizona for their second preseason game against the Cardinals. And, his mom and his family got to see him play for the first time in the NFL. It was just a beautiful story, and I'm rooting so hard for the kid to make the team. He's probably going to have to put on some more weight, though. Like, he talked about he's 235 pounds. As a defensive end, you got to put on more weight than that. Like, that's offensive linemen are going to overpower you if you're only 235 pounds. So, but I'm rooting hard for the kid. But I got to say this. As far as the Dallas Cowboys, I like just about everything about this team. I'm not panicking. I'm kind of done talking about the Dak shoulder injury. He's fine. They're easing him back into it, although I will admit I was wrong on Monday's show about I pretty much guaranteed Dak is going to play in Saturday's preseason game against the Texans. Well, yesterday Mike McCarthy said highly unlikely. He's probably not going to play. Okay. That's fine. You still got 21 more days. 3 weeks from today is the opening night showdown between the Cowboys and the Buccaneers to kick off the 2021 NFL season. Dak will be ready in 21 days. Matter of fact, I'm sure he'll fully practice the week prior. Dak's fine. But Zeke, this is about as mature. He's being kind of like the class clown, right? He's episode 1. He, kind of cake in the face, if you will, to Dak Prescott for his birthday. You see him with the powder. I won't get too much into that. You can watch the episode for yourself. But, he's still kind of the class clown. Zeke has matured significantly since he came into the league. He's certainly put on muscle, no question about it. You've seen what he's done in the offseason. He's clearly taking care of his body. I'm not expecting the Zeke from 2016 to return because I think that's unrealistic. I don't think Dallas even needs Zeke to lead the league in rushing. But could you be 2018 Zeke? Now, that Zeke led the league in rushing, but not by much. He was still great. If Zeke is touching the ball quite a bit in the final minutes of football games, that means Dallas is in a good spot because you want to be able to hand the ball off to your running back who's making quite a bit of money, I might add. They paid him a lot. He hasn't showed up since he got that contract. He knows he needs to show up this year because the first 2 years since he signed the deal, not great. He knows he's got to show up, and I'm sure he will. But I think with Ezekiel Elliott, it's if you can hand the ball off to your star back, bleed clock, make the opponent use their timeouts. You'd like to take the clock all the way down to 0 and take a knee. Dallas really hasn't had that luxury the last 2 years because the running game has been non-existent, forcing Dak to have to drop back and carry the team back from pretty much insurmountable deficits, which sometimes he has, incredibly. Others he hasn't. But some of the best teams in the league, they got running games. That's what I felt like derailed Kansas City in some regard. They didn't really have a running game last year. They did when they won the Super Bowl. And so now they fixed their offensive line. Now I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire will have a pretty solid year. Might be a mid-round fantasy pick if you're think about that, because look what they did with their O-line. They drafted my man Trey Smith, steal the draft, 6th round out of Tennessee. They went and got Orlando Brown from the Ravens. They reloaded that offensive line in free agency, so that's good on them. But Tampa Bay can run the ball. Rams, even with their starting back out, that's a great offensive line. They can run the ball. Seattle can run the ball. San Francisco can. Okay, Baltimore can. Cleveland definitely can. Like, the best teams have a balanced attack. You still want Dak to throw the ball 60% of the time. Heck, 70% of the time. Look what he's making this year. This year alone, he's making $75 million. And so you want to be able to lean on Ezekiel Elliott, to lean on the running game. Because the best teams, listen, it's not the sexiest way, to talk about football, but you still got to be able to run the ball. You don't have to have Derrick Henry. But if Zeke is Zeke, listen, man. My one concern, though, about the Dallas Cowboys in 2021 is one Mike McCarthy. They started episode 2. He gave another speech. It also wasn't inspiring whatsoever, like the speech in the middle of episode 1. And, yeah, I'm worried about the coach. The head coach, I should say. Like the offensive coordinator. I like Kellen Moore. I definitely like Dan Quinn. That defense is going to, I'm not saying the defense is going to be like swarming the field like Tampa Bay or something, but they're going to be, if they are an average defense, Dallas is in the playoffs. They're going to win their division if their defense is average. You can pencil it in right now. And maybe better. Maybe better, but we'll see. Offensive line comes back. Zeke looks more like Zeke. Okay, Dak was on pace to throw for 6,000 yards, which has never even come close to being done in the NFL until he got hurt in week 5. You got CeeDee Lamb, who every reporter in Dallas, every coach in Dallas said, that dude has done ridiculous things at training camp. He's looked amazing. Defensively, Micah Parsons, look how he's flashed in the preseason. And in training camp, the coaches are seeing the same thing. Keanu Neal, I didn't like the Keanu Neal signing at all in free agency. He's been excellent in the preseason. Okay? Leighton Vander Esch has had a good camp. So, the guys that need to show up for Dallas this year, so far, so good. As a head coach, I'm worried about. I mean, I'm not a big Matt LaFleur guy in Green Bay, but the Packers, not including the playoffs, heck, let's include the playoffs. They've lost 8 games in 2 years. Like, they've been really, really good since Mike McCarthy got fired. Aaron Rodgers said I think the word they used for his offense was archaic, prehistoric. That's the words they were using to describe Mike McCarthy's offense. Mike McCarthy is the only thing that concerns me. Because in this division, just in the division, I think at the very, very best case scenario, he's the second best coach. Ron Rivera, nobody disputes. He's a better coach than Mike McCarthy. Joe Judge, it's a toss-up. It is. Giants had all kinds of injuries last year. Still came closer to going to the playoffs than Dallas did. Right? Then you look around the rest of the NFC, it's ridiculous. Sean McVay, please. Kyle Shanahan, Pete Carroll, Bruce Arians, Sean Payton. I mean, it's around just the NFC. Like Mike McCarthy, just looking at the Cowboys schedule right now. Mike McCarthy is going to be the inferior coach in most of the games. Because when I sit and look at the Cowboys schedule, they obviously open with Tampa Bay. Bruce Arians is absolutely a better coach than McCarthy. Week 2 against the Chargers, we don't know. So that's kind of, I give Mike McCarthy the slight edge, but it's close. Okay, you got Nick Sirianni, the Eagles coach, looks like he's reading off a teleprompter when he's introduced as the head coach of the Eagles. That was embarrassing, but I'll give Mike McCarthy the edge over him, but Philadelphia is a train wreck right now. Matt Rule, I'd take Matt Rule over Mike McCarthy any day of the week. Any day of the week. Like we did in college. Completely turned around Temple and even more difficult, Baylor. And Baylor had all sorts of issues in their program when he took over. And within 2 years, they were in the Big 12 championship game. 2 years. Like, Carolina's got their coach. You see what they paid him, too. They know they got their coach. Okay? Week 5, I told you, Joe Judge, Mike McCarthy, it's a toss-up, and I'd probably give Joe Judge the edge. Week 6, they play the Patriots. Bill Belichick, please. It's not even a debate. Of course, Bill Belichick's a better coach than Mike McCarthy. They get the bye. They play the Minnesota Vikings. Mike Zimmer's a better coach. Denver Broncos, Vic Fangio, I'll give Mike the slight edge. Atlanta Falcons, Arthur Smith, we don't know. I'll give Mike the edge. But then Andy Reid's a better coach. Okay. Raiders, John Gruden, I'd say it's dead even, a tie. Saints, Sean Payton's a better coach. Washington, Ron Rivera's a better coach. Giants again. Okay, you got Joe Judge is a better coach. Washington again. Ron Rivera's a better coach. Arizona, I give Mike the edge over Cliff Kingsbury. And then, finally, you got the Eagles with Nick Sirianni, Mr. Teleprompter. And I'll give Mike the slight edge. But Mike McCarthy's going to be the inferior coach in most games this year. That's what worries me. But thankfully, the Cowboys are in a pretty weak division, which I think they will dominate so long as Dak is healthy. And we'll see what happens from there. So this right here. This is the topic I look forward to more than most every year, is when I rank my top 10 quarterbacks currently in the NFL. So before I rank in 2021 my top 10 quarterbacks, let me look real quick. I'll put it up here for you guys. 2020. Top 10 quarterbacks in 2020. Pat Mahomes 1, Russell Wilson 2, Tom Brady 3, Deshaun Watson 4, Lamar Jackson 5, Aaron Rodgers 6, Drew Brees 7, Jimmy Garoppolo 8th, Dak Prescott 9th, Kyler Murray is 10th. So that's my top 10 quarterbacks from 2020. 2021 is here. The season is 3 weeks away. Here we go. This, ladies and gentlemen, is my top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL currently in 2021, starting with number 10, Matthew Stafford. I put Matthew Stafford at 10th because, look, he's out of Detroit now. He's out of Detroit. We all know they're as dysfunctional an organization as could be. They've now got Mr. Kneecap Biter coaching the team in Dan Campbell. I feel terrible for Jared Goff that he's there now. But Matt Stafford, I put him over Matt Ryan. It was a debate between Matt Stafford and Matt Ryan. I gave Stafford the edge simply for the fact that Matt Ryan had Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley last year. Matthew Stafford did not have that. Well, now he's with the Rams. And this is it. Like, Matthew Stafford, we all know how talented he is. There's no question about that. But can he lift a team to being a Super Bowl contender? We know he's better than Jared Goff. And with Jared Goff, the Rams got to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, just 2 years ago. And so now, with Stafford, you've got the O-line. Cam Akers is gone for the season. They can plug another running back in, not quite as good as Cam Akers, but with that O-line, they can succeed. He's got the receivers, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. Okay? Defensively, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey. That Rams defense was the number 1 defense in the National Football League last year. Great special teams. Sean McVay's your head coach. The only adversity, I should say the biggest adversity Matt Stafford will face next year, the division is brutal. Seattle, San Francisco, Arizona's no joke. But everything else, for the first time in his whole career, goes Matthew Stafford's way. So he's 10th, but this is the biggest year of his career. I don't think there's a doubt about it. He still has yet to win a playoff game, but we'll see. Was it Detroit being Detroit? Or was it maybe he's just not that guy? I've heard him called Stat Padford because he puts up the numbers. We shall see. Number 9 in the list, Justin Herbert. After 1 season, I have Justin Herbert as the 9th best quarterback in the National Football League. Think about this. Justin Herbert, behind the worst offensive line in the NFL last year. Don't take my word for it. Take Pro Football Focus's. Okay, they study film like all day. I don't. I'm just going off what they said. The worst offensive line in the league last year was the LA Chargers. Yet and still, Justin Herbert threw for 4,300 yards, and his 31 touchdowns and 396 completions were both rookie records. That is a dude you can build around. I said going into last year's draft in 2020, I said I have doubts about Burrow because of, I don't know if I'm still like doubts about whether he could be a franchise quarterback. And certainly the team he was going to, the Cincinnati Bengals, is just a mess. And then I had doubts about Tua for injury reasons. And so I said, I think this dude could be the best quarterback out of the 2020 draft. Well, he was. No question about it. And the Chargers are kind of my sleeper team in the AFC. Now, the only doubts I have about them, they're in the same division with Kansas City. Like, that's going to cause some real problems. But I would not be shocked to see this team, maybe, just maybe they get to the AFC Championship game. Just throwing that out there. You never know. With this dude, what he did last year, you never know. So that brings me to number 8 on my list. It is number 8, Lamar Jackson. Now, people are brutal on Lamar Jackson, I swear. We're talking about a guy who not only won the MVP 2 years ago, he won it unanimously. Everybody voted. Every first place vote went to one Lamar Jackson. I think it's kind of the Giannis Antetokounmpo effect with Lamar. We know he's good. We see oh wow, that's I've not seen a quarterback do that maybe since Michael Vick. But he's different. He doesn't look like your stereotype. I mean, we all know you got to be able to move nowadays as a quarterback. You know, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen, but we've never really seen a quarterback that is a better runner than thrower, and he's not a bad thrower by any stretch of the imagination. Okay? Lamar Jackson, in the regular season, folks, he's lost 7 games. He's lost 7 games in the regular season in 3 years. He's good. So those that doubt Lamar Jackson or whether the Ravens should give him a contract, I don't know what to tell you. He's got an MVP. He won his first playoff game last year and did it on the road against the team that crushed him the year prior. He put on extra muscle, could still fly. He's only going to get better as a passer. He's still a kid. He's 24, 25? He's not even in his prime yet. He's my number 8 quarterback. I don't care what anybody says about Lamar Jackson. This dude is as good as it gets. So let's go to number 7, a guy who dropped, I wouldn't say quite significantly, but definitely dropped from last year. Number 7, Deshaun Watson. Now, this is the only quarterback on the list that I have no idea if he's going to play this year. No idea. Obviously, legally, I'm not going to speak on anything as far as the legal process and whatnot, but we have no idea. But Deshaun Watson, last year, I get the Texans went 4-12. That had that did play factor in me dropping him somewhat. But Deshaun Watson, 33 touchdowns and threw for 4,800 yards with a bottom 5 offensive line and a bottom 5 defense. For that matter, not a good coaching staff whatsoever. And a dysfunctional organization. No idea if he's going to play this year. No idea how the legal process is going to play out. But what I do know, what I see on the field from Deshaun Watson, wow. Arm, accuracy, mobility. The ability to lift a team that has no business, even sniffing relevance. And he wins a lot of games that they should lose. Now, last year, that was not the case. And we'll see what happens with the Texans this year. A lot of uncertainty. But Deshaun Watson, to me, is the 7th best quarterback in the league. Number 6 is the man I've loved since day one. Matter of fact, even before that, since he was a member of America's team, Mr. Rain Dakota Prescott, better known as Dak. He's my number 6. People are brutal on Dak Prescott, I swear. Dak Prescott. Okay. I talked about earlier in the show last year. I talked about when I was talking about Hard Knocks. Dak was on pace to throw for 6,000 yards. For context, the record is Peyton Manning with over 5,400 yards. Dak wouldn't have just eclipsed that. He'd eclipsed it by a mile. Until he obviously suffered a horrible ankle injury against the Giants in week 5 before his career. 6th highest. People criticize, he throws too many interceptions. Really? 6th highest touchdown to interception ratio in NFL history. And in his first 4 years, we're not going to count last year because he only played 5 games. It's not fair. But his first 4 years, he's tied for the most games with a passer rating of 100 plus with Russell Wilson. That's who I've compared him to from day one. Not, size-wise, Dak's a bigger guy than Russell Wilson. But as far as just ability, they're both fairly similar players. This guy gets better and better and better year in and year out. And for the life of me, I don't know what fellow Cowboys fans don't see in this guy. I don't get it. If you move on from Dak, you saw what happened last year. Andy Dalton, as I've said, low-end starter, high-end backup. He's a decent quarterback. They went into a downward spiral if I've ever seen one. It was all because Dak Prescott was gone. They got him back and like the Cowboys' chances a lot this year. We're going into the top 5 now. Number 5, a man who just got paid. Josh Allen. Josh Allen, to me, says what he's done the last few years, to me, says a lot about him in regards to his character and in regards to his work ethic. Because since he came into the league, his rookie year was disastrous. It was terrible. 10 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. It wasn't good at all. His numbers, including touchdown passes, yards, completion, and passer rating, have all went up every single year that he's been in the league. He's got probably the best arm in the NFL. That includes Mahomes. Mahomes can sling it, but this dude's got a rocket for an arm. I mean, it's ridiculous. His accuracy's gotten better. I mentioned completion percentage. He seems to be a great leader. Obviously, Buffalo's an excellent coaching staff, Sean McDermott. But this guy gets better and better every year. Year 1, disaster. Year 2, gets better, and the Bills make the playoffs. Year 3, they win the division and get to the AFC Championship game. So I guess the next logical step then at that point is Super Bowl. Who knows? They're definitely in the picture. They definitely got a shot to do it. And Buffalo has, without a doubt, found their franchise quarterback. Number 4, one of my favorite players in the history of the NFL, Russell Wilson. Okay, Russell Wilson is a guy who showed up with the Seattle Seahawks, and they were a running team. It was beast mode, Marshawn Lynch. And they were beast mode, Marshawn Lynch the previous 2 years, and they went 7-9 both years. It's not a disrespect to Marshawn Lynch at all. Hall of Famer. But a running back can't carry you. Russell Wilson shows up. 9 years, folks, he's never had a losing season. Ever. He's never even went 500. He's only missed the playoffs one time. That was 2017. And again, they still had a winning record, 9-7. And in what some people consider a down year last year, for Russell Wilson, he still threw 40 touchdown passes, had a completion percentage of 69%. That is a career high. 4,200 yards, 105 passer rating, and they won their division. And that was a down year, what many said about Russell Wilson. If that's a down year, man. Going to number 3 now, Aaron Rodgers, the MVP. Aaron Rodgers, 48 touchdowns, 71% completion percentage, a passer rating of 121.5, and won his 3rd MVP. Nothing else needs to be said. Number 2, the greatest quarterback in the history of the National Football League, Tom Brady. Again, what else needs to be said? At the age of 43 years old, folks, he threw 40 touchdown passes, won 3 road playoff games. The latter 2 of them were against Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers, and was a part of an absolute domination in the Super Bowl of the Kansas City Chiefs, who at that time were the defending champs. Tom's unbelievable, but I still cannot put him above number 1, Patrick Mahomes. I've never seen anything like this kid, ever. I've never seen anything like this kid. His first 3 years as a starter, He's at least gotten to the AFC Championship game. And then the last two, he's been to the Super Bowl. He's won one of them. He's won an MVP. He's won a Super Bowl MVP. You can't. I don't know what else you could say about this kid. He's unbelievable. Rocket arm, ridiculous accuracy. I mean, he's incredible. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL, and I love Tom Brady, but hey, my homeboy is that guy. So here we go. I'll put it up right now. My top 10 quarterbacks in 2021. You see the list. Number 1, Pat Mahomes. That stayed the same from last year. Tom Brady went up a spot to number 2. Aaron Rodgers went up 3 spots to number 3. Russell Wilson dropped 2 spots to number 4. Josh Allen was not on the list last year. He's number 5 this year. Dak went up 3 spots to number 6. Deshaun dropped 3 spots to number 7. Lamar Jackson also dropped 3 spots to 8. Herbert was not on the list last year because he was a rookie. He's number 9. Matthew Stafford also not on the list last year. He is number 10. There you go. Top 10 quarterbacks in the National Football League in 2021. And so with that, that is all the time we have for today's show. Be sure to catch Carving It Up tomorrow, as always, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. Hope everybody has a great week and a great evening. Continue to stay safe. God bless you all. Peace out.